They say those who can do and those who can't teach. Well, I'm deaf, so I can't teach. So they might say those who can teach and those who don't dust books. There's nothing wrong with being a book duster. Narcissus and Goldman by Herman Hesse is an excellent read. It's easy to see why he and Thomas Mann hit it off. I like to think that Thomas Mann would have hit it off with Richard Wright for the same reason. Beautiful architecture, involved intellectual action. Narcissus and Goldman has a man who is in a monastery and another man who's filled with wandering and wanderlust, and somewhat asks you to reflect on whether a life of books is worth leading. It is. I haven't lived much. I haven't traveled much. But occasionally I have found a very good book. And occasionally I've heard from interesting people. So it's appropriate that I would mention this to the JFK Library as a call for videos regarding an excellent read. I'll tell you the story of how I found this book. I found other books too. I found Ignazio Sillone's Fontamora, a very slender book about the poverty stricken in Italy. He was an anti fascist. He showed the character of the truly poor who were resistant to Mussolini. Ignazio Sillone's Fontamora was quite a find. I looked for quite some time in the used bookstore, hoping to find something I hadn't read, hadn't even heard of. I was in Lindemann Library in 1987. I was 26 or 27 years old. It's part of Lehigh University. It's a beautiful library with lovely places to sit and relax, and has alcoves almost like a large ship, stairways leading up back into stacks to browse. I came upon a book called A Time for Greatness. It looked like a polemic. It's funny how things fall together because I now know that this was the slogan for JFK's 1960 successful presidential campaign. Herbert Agar wrote this during World War II. In fact, my copy is a Special Armed Forces Services edition on paper that's meant to be rationed. It's a complete book, not a digest. It's a wonderful polemic about the hardships that Americans face and how our commitment to ethics and principles lessen the hardship, and how addressing the hardship should be one of the principles, should be a basis of our ethics. So when he talks about some of the good that unions and socialism do, such as in the postal system, he means to say not that they take away our freedoms, but that they make our freedoms possible by addressing our hardships. He's not an ideologue, he's an ideologue buster. But he's also was the editor of the Southern Review. Once I came upon a mention of a man in The Gathering Storm by Winston Churchill, who is said to have been brave enough to take off his French general's uniform, resign from France, and become a common Czech foot soldier in resistance and opposition to the surrender of Czechoslovakia to Hitler's forces. He ended up in a prison, but they didn't know they had, so he survived World War II. I've always loved Martha Gellhorn. She wrote to me once. She lived in the White House with Eleanor and Franklin. Occasionally, I would ask at a Japanese bookstore one day in the 21st century, I asked, does there happen to be a book about General Foucher? There never was, of course. One day someone said, well, yes, there's a monograph that's come out from St. Benedictine College by Richard Crane. I said, oh, goodness, French Conscience in Prague, please let me buy that. And they secured a copy for me. Turned out that Martha Gellhorn had a fiction about him, something I never knew. So these works that appeal to me tie together. They're part of the indissoluble braid of American stewardship. A book duster has their place. I'd like to credit the people I love knew about one another. Makes it easier to think of the United States of America as home sweet home.